Faisal Rahman kept his life in straight lines. He measured days the way other men measured money, carefully, by rule and by habit. His house sat behind tall gates on a quiet street. The walls were painted a soft cream, the floors shone, and the rooms always smelled faintly of fresh flowers. People in the neighborhood spoke of Faisal as a man who had made his world precise. He had risen from nothing, learned to take risks, and then learned how to keep what those risks earned. His success gave him quiet power and a steady confidence. He liked things to be ordered because order made him feel safe. In that house lived his son, Rayyan. Rayyan was 9 years old, with hair that stuck up at strange angles and a small freckle by his left eyebrow. He had neat toys, neat clothes, and neat lessons. His days were full of tutors, a math tutor on Monday, a violin lesson on Wednesday, tennis coaching on Friday. The tutors taught him skill by schedule, and his parents looked on with the small pride of people who wanted everything to be right. Rayyan did what he was asked because that was how the world of the house worked. He had a good heart, but he was shy when things did not go as planned. Shazia had worked for Faisal's family for many years. She moved through the house like someone who knew every corner by touch. She cleaned rooms with careful hands, folded tablecloths until they were like squares of paper, and watched the children when they played. Shazia was not loud or pushy. She did her work and kept her head down. In the evenings, she would go home to a small apartment in the older part of town, where the rooms were smaller and the light came in through thin windows. There she lived with her daughter, Maya. Maya was 17 but quiet in the way that some bright people are. Her hair was usually tied back, and her notebook was always with her. The notebook was battered at the edges because she carried it everywhere, under her arm when she swept, tucked into her apron when she set the table. In the pages she wrote small things, short poems, a list of songs she wanted to learn, and sometimes, little drawings of music notes. Maya had once taken lessons at a local community center. She remembered scales and the feel of keys under her fingers. When the center had closed, she kept what she could in memory and in that notebook. One day in late autumn, the house felt busier than usual. Faisal had a long meeting and family friends were expected for dinner. Rayyan had his violin lesson in the afternoon. The violin tutor was a stern man who liked things exact. He had been working with Rayyan on a tricky bowing pattern for a week. Rayyan tried and the sound came out thin. The tutor frowned and tightened his mouth. Rayyan blushed and stopped trying to hide the frustration that built in him. He pushed the violin away and said he was tired. Maya walked through the corridor carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea. The house was big, but even so, the soft sound of a violin carries. She paused when she heard the last wrong note. Something in her tightened. She remembered the afternoons at the community center when a teacher had taught patience and patience had changed the sound a little at a time. Without thinking much about rules or consequences, Maya set the tray down, walked to the half-open door, and peered inside. Rayyan sat on the chair, fingers curled on the violin, discouraged. When he saw Maya, his expression went from stubborn to surprised. Maya did not say much. She sat on the bench near the old piano and struck one simple chord, humming to keep the rhythm. She moved her hands slowly, showing how to find the beat. She spoke in soft, plain words. "Try this," she said. "Count slow. Bow down, bow up. Your wrist must move light." At first Rayyan watched in silence. Then he tried the bow again, copying the motion of her wrist. The sound did not come out perfect at once, but it came out different, clearer, softer. Rayyan smiled with a small brightness that seemed new on his face. The tutor, who had stepped into the hallway to take a call and had returned to quiet, did not see the change at first. He only saw later that Rayyan was smiling and that the boy's shoulders had relaxed. For the next few evenings, when the house settled and most lights were turned down, Maya would sit with Rayyan and quietly teach him the same pattern. She used simple words, patient hands, and small exercises that fit his short attention. She taught not because she wanted praise, but because she loved the music and liked the way a child's confidence grows when he learns to do something small and right. They kept the lessons secret. In the house there were rules about where staff could be and what they could do. A maid's daughter was not expected to cross the invisible line that separated the family's private life from the lives of the staff. Maya knew this. She also knew the way a gentle push in the right place could lift a child. She told herself to be careful. She put her notebook away when footsteps approached. She practiced in small pockets of time, after she finished polishing the banister and before she took the laundry down to the staff room. Rayyan, who had found the lessons comforting, began to wait for those evenings. He liked the secret of it. He liked how the music room felt like a small island where nothing miserable could touch him. Secrets in big houses are never safe for long. One morning, Faisal left his study to take a call and walked down the corridor. He expected to see the tutor near the music room, perhaps checking the case of silver or arranging the sheet music. Instead he found Maya and Rayyan bent close over a small music sheet. The sight startled him in a way he had not expected. He paused in the doorway and watched. The two children did not notice him at once. Maya's fingers moved steady on the keys of the upright piano, and Rayyan's eyes were bright with learning. When they noticed Faisal, the room changed in a moment. Maya's face went pale with the fear of being caught. Rayyan looked up with a small, innocent surprise as though he had been doing nothing wrong. Silence fell like a dress over the room. Faisal felt a tightness move inside him. He was a man who liked rules because rules made his world sensible and safe. A maid's daughter teaching his son felt to him like a line crossed. He cleared his throat and called them to attention. His voice was calm but carried the weight of command. "Stop," he said. "This is not your place." Maya tried to explain in small hurried words. Rayyan, blinking, looked between the two adults. The tutor's eyes, from the doorway, narrowed to a thin line. For the first time since he had taught Rayyan, Faisal felt an anger that was not loud but cold. He ordered Maya to leave and told Rayyan to resume lessons with his appointed tutor. Maya obeyed. She tucked her notebook into her apron and left the room with her head down. Rayyan did as he was told, but the light in his face had dimmed. That evening, the house went through its usual motions, but the air felt different. Maya tried to sleep and found that the memory of Rayyan's smile would not leave her. She worried about whether she had overstepped. Shazia saw the trouble in her daughter's eyes and sat with her in the small kitchen. They spoke softly. Shazia reminded Maya of the rules of their world and spoke of how people can be harsh to those who cross lines, even with good intent. Maya listened and felt a shame that was new and sharp. Faisal returned to his study and looked at the framed certificates on his wall. He enjoyed seeing achievements arranged like trophies of his hard work. Yet now the image of Maya's small hands on the piano would not fade. He found himself thinking about the way Rayyan had looked when he played better, about how the child's shoulders had dropped as if a weight had been put down. For the first time in a long time, Faisal felt a small unsettledness about whether his neat rules were all that mattered. He told himself nothing would change, but in the quiet of his office he kept hearing the sound of a simple tune that would not leave him. Faisal tried to put the sight out of his mind, but it would not go. He went about his work with the same careful steps as always, but sometimes he would catch himself listening for the sound of a violin. The memory of Rayyan's small smile kept returning like a song that will not stop. He told himself he had done the right thing by stopping what he saw. Rules, he thought, kept the house safe. Yet a question had taken hold of him: why did the boy sound better when the maid's daughter helped him? Rumors have the small power of an insect. They move quickly through rooms and corridors, peeking into places where people keep their private things. Within a day, the story reached more ears than Faisal expected. A junior manager who often visited the house for charity work noticed Maya leaving the family wing with a small notebook tucked in her apron. He did not approve. People must know their place, he told a friend. The friend told another friend. Quiet whispers turned into a simple story across the neighborhood. The maid's daughter had been teaching the master's son. When people speak in this way, they mean more than the words say. For some, it was a sign of overstepping. For others, it was curious and even brave. Shazia heard the talk from a neighbor at the market and felt the tightness mothers feel when their children are the subject of gossip. She sat at her small kitchen table and smoothed her hands across a cup of tea, feeling both pride and worry. Maya, who had once been proud of her small secret lessons, now worried that her kindness might cost her more than she hoped. Faisal did not want to lash out in anger. He had never thought himself cruel. Yet he also did not want the matter to spread until he understood it. He called the head of the household staff and asked for the truth. The head told him what she knew. Maya had been helping Rayyan when the tutor was not in the room, and the boy liked it. That answer did not comfort Faisal. He wanted to see for himself. So he did something few expected. He called Maya to his study. When Maya entered his study, she moved slowly as if walking on glass. She had learned to be careful in big houses. Her hands were a little cold from the walk, and she held her apron near her as if it were a shield. Faisal sat behind his thick desk and looked at her without raising his voice. He asked her to sit across from him and to tell what had happened. Maya spoke in small, honest sentences. She told him how she had once learned music at a community center. She explained that she loved the way a child's face could change when a note finally sounded right. She spoke about the simple joy of helping someone try again. Faisal listened. He expected apology or shame. Instead he heard care and a quiet love for music. When she finished, he asked her to play something at the old upright piano near the window. Maya was surprised by the request. She had never played for a master of the house. Her hands shook for a moment, but then she found a small piece she remembered. The room filled with a clear and gentle sound. It was not showy. It was honest and simple. Faisal felt a soft change move inside him. He did not understand it fully, but he knew he had been wrong to stop the music without understanding the price of silence. That night, in his study, Faisal thought about his own child. He thought of how he had arranged every lesson, every tutor, as if life were a list to be completed. He had never thought how being taught by someone who cares can change a child more than a perfect tutor can. He kept thinking of the way Rayyan's chest had relaxed when the notes came out right. The thought made him nervous and tender at the same time. Faisal made a decision that surprised his staff when they heard it. He decided to pay for Maya's study. He called a local music school and arranged for a private teacher to meet with her 3 times a week. He also asked the school to recommend a program where she could learn properly and be tested. He would not show off this help. He wanted the lessons to be private, a quiet return for something good that had happened in his home. When Shazia heard about the lessons, she sat quietly in her small kitchen and cried. The tears were not only of joy. They were also of fear. She had seen how kindness can be used by others as proof of weakness. She worried that people would speak poorly of her daughter. Maya tried to refuse the offer at first. She had learned to take gifts carefully. But Faisal would not take no for an answer. He said that what she had done for Rayyan mattered and that talent deserved a chance. He promised to pay for the lessons as long as Maya wanted them. Word moved again through the household. Some staff were happy. They said it was good that someone had seen Maya's worth. Others watched with cold eyes. They said that the house should keep its lines and that giving special favors could make trouble. The junior manager who had first noticed Maya's movement felt uneasy. He whispered that this was not the way to run a household. For him, rules and rank had a clear place. In secret, May began her lessons. The private teacher was kind and careful. He taught her scales and how to read music more clearly. Maya practiced in the evenings after her chores, her fingers learning the language of keys and bows. She carried her small notebook everywhere and wrote down the teacher's notes. Rayyan began to see her in a new light. He watched as her hands moved across a sheet of music and felt respect for the girl who had helped him find courage. He would sometimes leave a small note on the piano bench thanking her. Those notes were simple: "Thank you, you make music easy, you helped me." The neighborhood, however, continued to talk. Some called the help a kind act. Others called it a sign that the household was changing for bad. A cousin of Faisal's who attended the family's dinners spoke sharply to him. "Why give special treatment?" the cousin asked. "People will think you are showing off." Faisal listened but did not change his mind. He believed that the lesson mattered more than the rumor. He had begun to carve a small space inside his orderly life for things he had not planned for beauty, for patience, for helping others without always measuring the cost. As Maya's skills grew, so did the risk that the quiet would be broken. Some people wanted to make a story from the beginning. They wanted to turn a small act of teaching into a scandal. But others saw something else: they saw a child learning and a man deciding to help. The difference between these views would shape what came next. Faisal quietly began to think beyond Maya. He saw how one small change had moved the house. He began to imagine ways to help other children who had talent but no means. He thought about creating a small scholarship or a class at the old community center that had closed. He did not speak of this at first. He watched how the lessons changed Maya and how Rayyan changed too. He saw that giving the chance mattered more than how people might talk about it. Inside the house, life moved forward with new rhythms. Rayyan practiced with a lighter heart. Maya kept her head down in public but walked a bit taller. Shazia slept better at night. Gossip continued at the edges, but the music, the real music, kept playing. Slowly, the house learned that some lines could be redrawn, not to make chaos, but to make room for something kinder. Faisal began to think differently after that quiet meeting with Maya. He had seen her play a few simple notes, and something inside him had shifted. He realized the girl carried a kind of hidden gift, and he could not ignore it. For years, he had lived by strict rules: money builds walls, walls keep order, and order keeps life safe. But now, one small act of kindness had shown him that sometimes rules cut away more than they protect. He could not forget the way his son's face had brightened when Maya helped him. That memory stayed like a light in a room he did not want to leave. Faisal decided he needed to understand more. Quietly, without telling his relatives or even his closest friends, he spoke to the tutor and to a woman who ran a small music school in the city. He asked about how a student could be trained properly, how someone like Maya, who had only scraps of lessons in her childhood, might build skill. The answers surprised him: all she needed was time, a patient teacher, and the chance to study seriously. It was not about wealth or name, it was about steady practice. He began to see that a door could be opened with very little, if someone cared enough to open it. So Faisal arranged for Maya to have formal lessons. He did not make a speech, he did not tell the world, he simply told Maya that she should accept. At first, she tried to refuse. She had been raised to believe that taking such help could be dangerous. She did not want people to say she had begged or pushed herself into places she did not belong. But Faisal told her firmly that she had earned the chance. "You gave my son confidence," he said. "That is something even money cannot buy. You will study, and I will pay. This is not a gift. It is a reward." His voice was final, and Maya could not argue further. The lessons began quietly. 3 times a week she visited the music school. Her teacher was gentle, encouraging her to use her memory but also showing her how to read and play with new skill. At home, she still worked beside her mother, folding laundry and cleaning. But at night, when the others slept, she practiced with her small notebook and the borrowed notes from her teacher. Her fingers grew stronger, her sound clearer. She began to stand a little taller, though she still kept her head down in the house to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Rayyan noticed. He saw the way Maya carried her notebook and sometimes hummed softly as she worked. He admired her. He wrote little notes for her, not fancy notes, just simple words on slips of paper left near the piano. Thank you. You make me better. Music is fun now. Those small messages made Maya smile when no one was looking. To Rayyan, she was not just a servant's daughter. She was the person who had helped him find joy in something that once felt heavy. Their friendship was simple, innocent, and full of the small sparks of kindness that only children and dreamers know how to share. But houses like Faisal's do not stay silent when something unusual happens. Word traveled through relatives, guests, and business friends. Some praised Faisal for being generous. Others whispered that he was breaking the natural order. A cousin at a family dinner said loudly, "Why are you giving special treatment to a servant's girl? What will people think?" The words were sharp, like stones thrown into a clear pond. Faisal listened and kept his calm. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "I believe in talent. If a door can be opened, why should I close it?" His cousin had no answer, but the gossip spread. Meanwhile, Maya's progress showed itself in a small but powerful way. At the music school, there was to be a recital. Students would play short pieces for their families and teachers. Maya was nervous, but her teacher encouraged her to take part. She played a simple melody on the piano, steady and clear. In the audience sat Rayyan and Shazia. When Maya finished, Rayyan clapped the loudest, his small hands beating together with joy. Shazia's eyes filled with tears. For her, it was the first time she saw her daughter not as a servant's child but as a student, as someone who belonged on a stage. It was a moment she would remember all her life. But the recital also opened the matter to the city. Among the audience were relatives of Faisal and friends of his business circle. One of them whispered, "That is the maid's daughter." The word spread quickly. Soon, the recital was not just a school event. It became a story people told. Some said it was touching. Others said it was wrong. A few even accused Faisal of using the girl for praise. The noise of the world was growing, and Faisal could feel its weight. He thought long into the night. He looked at his son, now playing with more joy. He thought about Maya, practicing late with her notebook. He remembered the closed doors of his own childhood and how hard it had been to open even one. He decided he would not let gossip control him. At the next gathering, with family and business partners around him, he stood up and spoke. His words were simple. He said, "Opportunity should belong to anyone who has talent. My son has learned not only music but courage because someone cared enough to teach him. That girl is now studying, and she will continue. And I will not stop with one child. There will be more chances, for others like her." The room grew silent. Some clapped politely, unsure what to do. Others frowned. But Faisal did not care. For the first time in many years, he felt he had spoken from the heart, not from the rulebook of wealth. He had taken a stand, not for himself but for the children who waited behind closed doors, dreaming of music, books, or light they could not reach. He knew there would be resistance. He knew the whispers would not stop. But he also knew he had begun something that could not be undone. That night, the household felt different. Maya sat quietly with her mother, holding her notebook close. Shazia looked at her daughter with a pride that no gossip could take away. Rayyan slept soundly, dreaming of notes and laughter. And Faisal, in his study, leaned back in his chair and thought not of profits or walls but of doors, and of how good it felt to open them. Faisal's speech at the family gathering did not pass quietly. In the days that followed, people in his circle spoke about it with surprise, doubt, and even some admiration. For years, Faisal had been known as a man of strict lines, one who valued order more than feelings. Now he had stood in front of his relatives and business partners and declared that opportunity should not be kept only for the rich. Some called him brave. Others whispered that he had gone soft. The city, always hungry for stories, began to talk about him in new ways. Inside the mansion, the air was different. Servants who once moved in silence began to whisper about how things were changing. Some of them smiled with hope, while others worried that too much kindness could bring chaos. Shazia walked a little taller, knowing that her daughter's worth had been seen, though she still warned Maya to be careful. People don't forget their jealousy easily, she told her one evening. Maya nodded, holding her notebook close. She was grateful for the lessons, but she also understood that not everyone would be happy about them. Faisal faced questions from his business circle. At lunches and dinners, partners leaned toward him and asked, "Are you turning your house into a charity school, or is this about reputation?" Faisal listened calmly. He knew that some of them spoke out of pride, afraid that if he changed the rules, others might expect them to do the same. He chose not to argue. Instead, he began to plan something bigger. If one girl could benefit from lessons, why not others? He imagined a scholarship program, small at first, but strong enough to grow. While Faisal thought about the future, a new challenge appeared. Adil, the owner of the city's most exclusive music academy, was not pleased. For years, his academy had been the only place where wealthy families sent their children to learn. It was a symbol of pride, a way to show status. When Faisal announced that he would support talents from poorer homes, Adil felt his business and his prestige were under attack. He started speaking against Faisal at public events, saying things like, "When you give training for free, you weaken its value," or, "These acts are not about music, but about personal glory." Faisal heard these words but did not let them shake him. Instead of fighting Adil, he did something unexpected. He invited him for tea. They sat in Faisal's study, two men of wealth but with different ideas. Faisal explained that he did not want to compete with the academy. He wanted to create a bridge, a small program where gifted children from poor families could be trained and then, if ready, admitted into the academy. At first, Adil resisted. But Faisal pointed out that opening the academy's doors, even a little, would bring respect, not harm. In the end, Adil agreed, though his smile was tight and his pride wounded. The program began quietly. Maya was one of the first students. Alongside her were a few others: a boy who played drums on empty cans, a girl who sang with a voice too strong for her small frame, and two children who loved the violin though they had never owned one. They met twice a week at the old community center, which Faisal had helped repair. Teachers volunteered their time, some paid by Faisal, others giving their hours freely. Slowly, the place filled with sounds, piano keys, violin strings, voices practicing scales. It was not perfect, but it was alive. News of the program spread. Parents from nearby neighborhoods came to watch. Some cried quietly, seeing their children hold instruments for the first time. Donations began to arrive from people who wanted to support. A local shop owner sent books of music. A retired teacher offered her time. The program was growing, and with it, the city began to see that Faisal's decision was more than a passing gesture. It was a steady effort. But with growth came new problems. A columnist wrote in the newspaper that Faisal was using charity as a mask for his business deals. "This is not kindness," the piece read, "it is strategy." The word stung. For a moment, Faisal felt the weight of doubt. But when he visited the community center one evening and saw Maya helping a younger student learn a simple tune, he knew the truth. Whatever people wrote or whispered, the children's joy was real. No rumor could erase that. In the mansion, the changes reached even Rayyan. The boy, once shy and bound by schedules, began to walk with more confidence. He respected Maya not only as a teacher but as a friend. He learned to listen and to be patient, lessons that stretched beyond music. Sometimes, he would join the community center sessions, sitting among the children who were different from him in wealth but not in heart. Shazia watched all this with a heart that was both heavy and proud. She had feared trouble, but she could not deny the beauty of what was happening. One evening, a recital was organized at the community center to show the progress of the students. Maya performed a short piano piece, steady and graceful. The hall was small, but it was full of parents, neighbors, and curious onlookers. When she finished, the applause was long and warm. Faisal stood quietly at the back, his arms folded. For him, the clapping was not for Maya alone. It was for the choice he had made to open a door. He realized then that change does not come from one grand act, but from many small, steady ones that build a bridge between people. The night ended with laughter, music, and the sound of children running outside under the streetlights. As Faisal watched, he understood something new: his house was no longer only his own. The walls he had built around himself had opened, letting in a sound brighter than silence, the sound of hope taking root. Months passed, and the program that Faisal had started no longer felt like an experiment. It had become something real, something rooted in the city. The community center, once dark and forgotten, now shone with the sound of children learning. Pianos that had been silent for years were alive again. Violins, some borrowed, some donated, filled the air with uneven but hopeful notes. The place was not grand, but it was alive with energy. Families who had once thought music belonged only to the wealthy now came each week to watch their children play. Maya was at the center of it all. Her life had changed more than she could have imagined. She still helped her mother at the mansion, but now she was also a student and, in time, a guide. She had grown confident, no longer hiding her notebook but carrying it proudly, filled with pages of notes and songs. She practiced every day, her fingers finding melodies more smoothly. Her teacher at the music school praised her dedication, and younger students at the community center looked up to her with wide eyes. She had become an example of what was possible. Faisal noticed these changes quietly. He had not set out to change lives beyond his sons, but that is what had happened. He found himself thinking less about business trophies and more about the sound of children practicing. At times, he even left his office early to stand in the back of the community center and listen. He rarely spoke on those visits, he preferred to watch. He saw Maya encouraging younger children, Rayyan clapping along with their songs, and parents smiling through tears. Those sights touched him more deeply than any deal he had signed. Rayyan, too, was different. The shy boy who had once dreaded lessons now approached them with joy. He asked questions, practiced without complaint, and even helped some of the younger children with their instruments. At home, he was gentler, kinder. He held open doors for the staff, listened when people spoke, and often reminded his father of the importance of patience. Faisal, who had once believed children needed only discipline and tutors, now realized that kindness and encouragement could do far more. The city could not stop talking about it. Some said Faisal was a visionary. Others still doubted, calling his actions a show. But the results could not be denied. Children who had never touched an instrument were now performing small recitals. Parents who had once given up hope now dreamed again for their children. Even Adil, the proud academy owner, admitted publicly that the partnership had made his institution stronger. His academy was no longer just a place for the rich, it had begun to open its doors, even if only slightly, to those with true talent. One evening, the community center held a recital unlike any other. The small hall was decorated with strings of simple lights. The stage was modest, but the air was thick with excitement. Parents filled the seats, neighbors stood by the doors, and even some city officials came to watch. The children performed one by one. There were mistakes, missed notes, and shy pauses, but there was also laughter and applause. When Maya stepped onto the stage, She wore a plain dress, but her presence was strong. She played a piece she had practiced for weeks. Her hands were steady, her face calm. The music filled the room, rising and falling like a gentle wave. When she finished, there was silence for a moment, and then the room erupted in applause. Shazia sat in the back, tears running down her face. She had never thought she would see her daughter stand on a stage, accepted and celebrated. Rayyan clapped with all his strength, his small voice shouting, "Bravo, Maya!" Faisal stood in the shadows, his eyes shining though he would not admit it. For him, this was more than music. It was proof that one choice, one door opened, could change the course of many lives. After the recital, people gathered outside under the streetlights. They congratulated Faisal, thanked him, and asked how they could help. Some offered money, others offered time. A teacher said she would volunteer twice a week. A shop owner promised to donate instruments. The program was no longer just Faisal's idea, it belonged to the community. It had become something bigger than he had dreamed. That night, as he walked back to his car, Faisal thought about his journey. He remembered the first time he had seen Maya teaching his son in secret and how his first reaction had been anger. He remembered telling her to stop, believing that rules mattered more than feelings. And he remembered how everything had changed when he saw the light in his son's face. He realized then that true wealth was not in money or trophies, but in the courage to lift others when you had the chance. At home, in his quiet study, Faisal sat back and looked at the walls lined with certificates and awards. For years, these had been his pride. But now, they seemed less important. What mattered more was the sound of children playing music in a small hall, the smile on his son's face, the tears of pride in Shazia's eyes, and the steady confidence in Maya's step. He had discovered a new kind of success, one that could not be counted in numbers but only in lives changed. People continued to talk about Faisal. Some praised him, some criticized, but he no longer cared. He had found a path that mattered to him. He continued to fund the program, expand the scholarships, and encourage others to join. And slowly, the city began to see music not as a treasure for the rich but as a gift that belonged to everyone. For Maya, the journey was only beginning. She dreamed now not only of learning but of teaching, of helping others as she had once helped Rayyan. She wanted to show children that they were brave, that they could try again and succeed. Her story spread quietly through the city, the story of a maid's daughter who became a student, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. And for Faisal, the greatest surprise of all was not the applause, not the praise, not even the growth of the program. It was something far simpler, the way his own heart had changed. He had learned that kindness could shape a house more than rules, that opportunity could build more than walls, and that courage could be found not only in great men but in a young girl with a notebook and a love for music. That was what stunned everyone in the end. Not a single grand gesture, but a chain of small, steady acts of kindness that built something stronger than wealth, a community where hope could live.